Hi everyone! So at the beginning of this video you will have seen some time lapses of me doing a painting. A couple of people had asked me to do an oil painting video, and it's quite a lengthy process really, and it's kind of, if you want to kind of do something relatively properly, then it takes a while. So I thought I'd quickly time lapse it, but spend the afternoon doing it and then time lapse the video and then stitch it into a sort of finishing video of me chatting. Lucky you. So I am theming this on the something from your fridge challenge. It was it was last week actually. I can't remember. But I thought I'd do it in a different way. I thought I'd do it in a sectional way, which is I've done before, and it's quite a nice way of breaking up a still life or a figure. And so I've used 4 little canvases here. This is the picture I did in the time lapse, which you'll see, which you will have seen in this video. But I've used 4 little kind of, I've got these, they're just like little, they're called little canvas boards, they're really cheap. And I sort of taped them together and sketched out, you'll see at the beginning of the video, I sketched out my composition. And what I'm planning to do afterwards is to break them apart when the picture's finished, to break them apart and to slightly offset them a bit, and just to see what that does to the composition and to see how it affects the way it looks, the light, the negative space in between. And it's just quite a fun little experiment. You can do this on paper. I've been using oils, obviously, but I mean, this is a sort of demonstration on how to use oil paints. Well, I not really, but I've just, it's on how I do it really. But if you were to use acrylics or anything, then you could do that on paper. You can use oils on paper, but just make sure that it's quite a thick paper, because if you're using turpentine or white spirit thinners, then it will eat away at the paper. So you kind of need something with a bit of weight. There's one of these nice kind of thick. You can see it's quite sort of thick, heavyweight cartridge. That will work. But other than that, then probably stick to canvases if you can, or use acrylics. And you can cut up your picture. It's best to cut it up before and then paint on it and then divide it again, if that makes sense. Because if you cut it up afterwards, then it doesn't quite. Well, you can play around with that, but it doesn't quite have the same effect for some reason. And what I did is I built up similar to the tonal portrait workshop I did a couple of weeks ago, based on the one that me and Ellen did. I worked in a 6 colour principle. So this is really, I used 6 colours, and that was it. So I used a yellow for this. I'll show you. I used a yellow, a lemon yellow, a cadmium red, but any red will do, a brown, burnt umber, a white, and a blue, an ultramarine or a phthalo blue or a cobalt blue. The ultramarine's best really, and that's it. And all those colours went towards this. So it's best to keep your colour palette limited, so that you get a kind of cohesion throughout the painting at the end. And you can then, what I was talking about in the portrait one, when you make several tones of a similar colour, so you work through the tones. So with this, I worked from light to dark, from dark to light, which is what you do with oil paints. You add the dark and then you build on top of it with light. So I basically blocked in all the areas I could see that were dark. I set up a still life. This I've got it on my phone. I took a photo of it. Here it is. And I sort of just squinted my eyes and blocked in all the areas that I could see that were really dark in my darkest tone, and then worked upwards from my mid to dark tone, and mid tone, then mid to light tone, and then light tone, and so on and so forth. And what I thought I'd do in this part of the video, because it's had a little bit of time to dry a bit, is I'm going to add some really like light accents to the picture, just to lift it a bit. The pear's a bit flat, it looks a bit sort of floaty, and the lemons need a little bit more light, and the tomatoes as well. But I kind of ran out of time and I got a bit hot doing it. You'll see that I was in the garden doing it, and I did get a little bit sunburned as well. So, oh dear. But yeah, you can see on this that there's some really quite light flashes, which I'm going to add in on this video. So all I have here is, I have palette knife, 6 colours, but I'm only going to use a few. I'm only going to use white and yellow and a little bit of red, yellow, burnt umber, and paintbrushes and some white spirit. But this is if you're using oils. If you're not using oils, then use water. So white spirit, so or turpentine. I've got genuine. It doesn't matter if you haven't got genuine turpentine. White spirit's fine, and a rag is always preferable with oil paints, and an apron. But I'm not going to put one on because I can't be bothered, and it means me going over there. And anyway, so I'm just going to mix a bit of white on my palette, and it's always good with oil paints to mix with a palette knife, because when you mix with a brush with oils, the brush just gets very clogged with paint, and then it becomes a bit smeary, and you can't get that sort of. So I'm going to put yellow. So I'm just mixing a yellow. Oh, that's acrylic. Stupid idiot. What am I doing? There's the oil. So mustn't use that. Scrape it off quickly. So I've just added a little bit of acrylic by accident. So I'm just going to scrape that off. Put it in the bin. I'm trying not to make a mess in the studio because Ingrid has been and done a deep clean of it, and it's worryingly clean. And I've kind of come in and make a mess. So yellow again. I'm just going to use a little bit because I'm not going to use much paint today. I'm trying to keep this short on top of the time lapse, so it's not like a really long video. And so I've got white, yellow, and what else was I going to do? A tiny bit of red and a tiny bit of brown. Oh, I might put a little bit of blue on this actually. So primarily I want the white really, but I'm just going to make up a really, really light version of each. So I've got my white here, so I'm going to make 3 blobs of white like this. 1, 2, and then just use that one as my third. I'm going to add a tiny bit of yellow to this one to create a light yellow. And with the palette knife, just keep sort of, you know, like lifting it all, scraping it all, and then sort of I don't know what the noun is for that. Like, I don't know. Like, is it a noun or a verb? I don't know. Anyway, just squish it around. So I've got a kind of really nice pale yellow there. You probably can't see it because of the light on the iPad. But yeah, there you go. Very, very pale yellow. And then I'm going to do the same with the other blob for my blue. Just a tiny bit goes a long way. So, and this is really just to use the primary colours that I've got, and just to create a very, very light accent using each primary colour to add onto this, where it looks the white looks bluer, or the white looks pinker, or the white looks redder, if that makes sense. Just the reflection of that. And a bit of yellow's gone in there, but that doesn't really matter. So that's kind of gone a kind of off-white now, kind of cool white. Scrape that off. Use a rag if you want to. It's really useful to have a rag, oil paints. And then the same for red. So I'm going to just use a bit of that to keep for white as well. You never really want it, nothing is really ever white, truly white, like completely white. That's way too pink. There's always a colour, even if it's really, really subtle. It's never really pure white, nothing is. So it's quite good to do this because it takes the whiteness out without it becoming a colour. So I've got very, very, you can probably see, not sort of a cool white, ignore that one, sort of a pinky white and then a yellowy white there. And with those I'm going to go onto my canvases, plural, with a brush, doesn't matter what brush, little brush, big brush. And I'm going to look at where the light is and where I'm sort of missing that. So I can already see there's a lot of light needed here. So I'm going to use, and that's quite a sort of weirdly, on the lemons, is quite a kind of cool white. So I'm going to use a bit of the blue white that I've made and add it on here like that. And you really do not need very much. You can kind of see that already. That's the more you add, the more chances of it becoming slightly unrealistic. So actually saying that, I'm just going to leave it like that. It really is like that, subtle, and that will make a dramatic difference to your piece. Just a tiny bit more there where it's just a bit more. And then I am going to, and try and, when you do this, if you do this, you might not, use a different brush for each one at this end bit, because then you get the real definition and clearness in the colour, which is what you're aiming for, really, just this part of the process. I'm going to add my yellow white here, just alongside the blue white, and then you can sort of, if you just feel like that's a bit too much, you can just give it a rub with your finger, that's fine, and blend it in a bit, because this is quite dry now. I try not to add the paint too thickly because it takes such a long time to dry on oil paint if it's really thick. I'm just going to add a teeny bit more right there, and that will do, I think. And keep looking at your still life when you do this, or whatever might not be doing still life, but keep looking at what you're drawing to see where the light's falling. And this was interesting actually, because when I was working on it throughout the day, the light changed. Obviously the sun was moving and the light changed on the fruit, and it was quite a challenge to keep up with that and make it look sort of like the fruit wasn't floating or change, and sort of a bit interchangeable. But that was quite nice. I quite liked that element of it. And again with this lemon, there's a real like halo of light there, and it's quite speckly, and it's cold again. It's got that coldness on it. There's a bit more there, but then I think that needs a bit of warmth on it. The reason I'm doing this after, when it's dry, a little bit drier, is because when you're doing your painting to begin with, the colours can all, it's quite hard to apply light oil paint onto dark oil paint, really, if you want it really, really bright, because it just blends in a bit. I'm sure there's a way around that, but I don't know it, so this is my way around it. That bit there. I think that's too much. So it doesn't matter if it is too much, just go with a brush and sort of, just going to put way too much paint on here. I don't know why I did that. Add yellow back over the top to kind of mute that down a bit. Yeah, I mean, oil paints, I can't remember who was it asked me, but oil paints are funny. I just love using them. I love them because they've got such versatility, and they don't dry immediately. You can work on them the day after or a week after. You can think about what you're doing and completely change it if you don't like it. And they're sort of forgiving. But lots of people don't like them because of the faff of associated with using them, which is like, the fact that they're not soluble with water, washing them. It's a bit of a, if you can't leave them set out, then they are a bit of a pain. But I kind of think they're worth it, really. But like I said, if you want to use acrylics, then that's fine as well. Have a go. Just have a go. This shouldn't be restricting you. This should be enabling you to have a go at these things. So if it is that you've got acrylics, you can't find or go out and get some oils from somewhere because everywhere's shut, obviously, then just have a go with acrylics and have a go at a still life. The good thing about still life, I think, is that it really makes you look at an object. It really makes you look, because you have less of a sort of preconceived idea of what things look like. With the body, you're more inclined to imagine that the arms are this long, but with objects, especially with fruit and edible things, they're also interchangeable. They're also different sizes. They're also, you can't just make up. So you kind of really you're forced to look, and you're forced to look at the light and the shape. And I like the way that you can blur the edges. Like here I've blurred the edges quite a lot of the tomatoes, because it did actually look like they were sort of weirdly floating when I was looking at them. And you can just, it's a really good exercise in looking, which is why I like doing them. And this is sort of why I put it on the challenge, because it's just a nice way of sort of, yeah, examining, as it were. And I did do a rough sketch before, you'll see on the video, but not much, just really just to make sure that I had the idea of where they were, where the things were placed. That's it really. It's not, doesn't need, I just go straight in with what I was saying about using the light and the dark. Putting the dark in first and then working from dark to light. Now I'm going to do my pear. So obviously pear is green, but I haven't got green, so I'm going to make it green, because the primary colours you can make green obviously. So I'm just going to make a little green and add it to another pile of my white, which is here. There. Just to get some life back into the pear, because I think it's, personally I think it's gone a bit flat. So what's nice with this as well, when you've done it in these little canvases, I quite like, is that you can frame them, sort of mount them, stick them on a white free mount, as it's called, without like a mount that surrounds it. So stick them down on a white board and then frame them so they look sort of look quite 3D, and it works when they're separated. I've done that before and it's really quite nice. I'm just going to add a tiny bit, really not very much because there's not much going on here, of light to my pear. And actually there's a really, now I'm looking at this again, there's a totally missing element to this pear, which is why it looks a bit weird and flat. I haven't really got any darkness here at all on my pear, but that's okay. It doesn't really, this is only a rough exercise to show you guys. And I'm just going to add, oh no, I just filled it. Oops. I'm just going to add a tiny bit. Green. There's that sort of appley green colour. What I mean by flat is it's gone a bit, it's lost its liveliness. It had a really nice shape, and then I think I did something and I was like, oh, and then I got too hot, so I gave up and didn't correct it. It's got this sort of patchy weird thing on it. So I'm just mixing a sort of slightly more appley green, because I forgot to do this the other day. And then I'm just gonna, and if I wanted to make a darker version of this green, I would be inclined to add some of my brown. So there's no black at all in this, which is interesting, because it sort of, you'd assume there was. But the blue and the brown that you mix together, burnt umber and the ultramarine, if you mix them neat together, they make a really dark, kind of dark colour, which that's all you'll need for darkness. Black is just really harsh and sort of overtakes everything. And yeah, not necessary really. If you work in this tonal way, it's not beneficial. Right, okay, and then I'm going to quickly, I'm on 19 minutes, I am going to make this 21 minutes. I'm going to quickly add in with a new paintbrush, which I don't have here, I'm going to add in my little pinky bits on the tomato. So I've got some really light bits on the tomato, which I'm just going to add in. just put a dot of white and I'm going to blend it out with my finger to get that sort of shine on the tomato that you can see here. And then the same with that one. Just make sure that it's got that brightness in the middle. And then that one, which had a weird little... And I don't think you need much actually, so you can go a bit overboard with this whole accenty thing and it can just look a bit forced and a bit made up. So that's what I'm going to do actually on that. And then what I'm going to do quickly is to move my phone down there and have a look where there's real white going on here with a big brush, get my light bluey colour that I've mixed up and just add in some of this. There was some real lightness happening behind this lemon, and you'll find that that probably makes the lemon pop and the yellow look yellower. So, whoops. It's a good thing about oil paint, just rub it out with your finger. Just naturally try and blend that out so it looks like it's... And then where is the other bit? Here, behind that tomato there. Don't know what happened up here. I think I was getting a bit delirious with the heat, and then just sort of rushed the last bit of it and did something strange up there. So that's all right. Just going to add a bit of white in there, and then where there's another very light bit is under the tomato here. There was a little bit of weird light shining down. So you see that's just sort of made it pop now. The sun was shining between the lemon and the pear there, and then there as well there was quite a bit of light going on. Just going to blend that with my finger because I don't want it to look like I've just blobbed it on my hand. Ideally I'd want this background bit to be a bit more wet when I'm doing this, but can't have it all, can we? I look like I've got really dressed up to do this video. I haven't. I was experimenting with eye makeup through boredom before, so I look like I'm going on the night on the tiles or something. A bit white there. Ooh. Oh, I don't like that. Why have I done that? And you sort of know, your intuition knows when you've added a bit that's not meant to be there because it just looks odd and you think, oh, I shouldn't have done that, but that's okay, everybody makes mistakes. And then that, put that in a bit. And there's a bit of white, sort of creamy white there. And the pear. I'm trying to make this pear look less like it's floating. So I'm just going to blend that out with a bit of blue. So that is it. I think I'm going to leave it at that. Oops. Leave it like that because you can overwork these things and then just look a bit rubbish. So I think that has minorly improved it. Just with the, you can see just the simple addition of, I'm scrubbing this a bit to make it look less harsh. With the simple addition of just a bit of light and dark, yeah. Sorry, I'm doing that thing now where I'm like seeing bits that I've missed. Anyway, have a go. That's the finished article. Well, I say finished article, it's not really finished, but I quite like things unfinished. And then you can have a play with it untape it. I'm gonna do. Well, you won't be really able to see it. So what I'll do is I'll untape it and post a photo on the end of this video. I'm still getting used to all this business. Okay, bye guys, thank you.